Okay, let's move along to the next chapter. This one is entitled The Ten Commandments. And if you guys are enjoying this audiobook, could you please subscribe, unsubscribe, and then subscribe again? Also, like, unlike, and then like the video again. I've heard from other YouTubers that this is tricking the algorithms and allowing people to actually get visibility. I've been extremely heavily censored and shadow banned on pretty much every one of my social media accounts because of the kind of stuff that I talk about. So, all right, we're making a lot of progress through this book now. I know I kind of started it almost like a year ago, and I noticed a few people in the comments wanted me to continue reading it. So I'm just trying to like power through it as fast as I can. It's been pretty interesting so far. It's a little bit difficult to read because this is the first book I've ever tried to record myself reading, where they have a lot of Hebrew words integrated into it, and I'm not familiar with Hebrew. This is like my first time actually learning anything about translating Hebrew. So I do apologize if there's any sections where I come to where I kind of stutter on the pronunciation of the words. I'm trying to get through this as best as I can. Okay, the Ten Commandments in Hebrew, it looks like it's pronounced Devarim ha-eseret. The previous chapter pointed out that the story of Kivod is related to the period in which Moses was a regular visitor to the mountain where the Elohim used to dwell. Oh, you know what? Hang on one sec. Let me plug in my mic. Sorry. Okay, there we go. In the same context, belongs to the story of the delivery of the tablets of law, which we know as the Ten Commandments or the Decalogue. In these passages, we'll see that the Elohim's concreteness is very different from the figure of a quote-unquote God that looks after the man conceived in his wholeness from of a body and soul. We'll find out that confusion is often generated, whether intentional or accidental, between a number of direction given by the Elohim and the laws he calls for as the foundation of the covenant he has contracted with his chosen people, referencing Exodus 34, verse 27. The Hebrew expression with which these laws are defined is Devarim ha-eseret, 10 of the words, it says in parentheses next to it, and are always clearly identified as those that God wrote on stone, according to Exodus 34, verse 28, and Deuteronomy 4:13, and also 10, verse 4. Therefore, these 10 words are of the foundation of the entire Jewish and Christian religions, the latter being a direct subsidiary of the former. Are these 10 words to which the Elohim explicitly refers the very same as we know? When we think about the rules at the basis of Judaism, are we thinking of the same rules? Centuries of litigations have opposed commentators such as Origen, Philo of Alexandria, Josephus of the Church of Fathers, who unified all indications as opposed to those who differentiated them. This, in turn, made them joint or separated commandments. For instance, not coveting the neighbor's wife and belongings, idol making, and dedicated cult. The traditional dialogue is the following: I am your Lord, or I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not take that name of the Lord in vain. Okay, blah, blah. It's just going over the Ten Commandments. We all know that. We've all heard that before. Remember the Sabbath, for keep it holy. Honor the father and the mother. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against thy neighbor. You shall not covet thy neighbor's wife. You shall not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. This is the most important. This is the most popular version, which was also made more understandable to preserve it and to achieve an effective mnemonic transmission. And then the next part down below here is Catechism of the Catholic Church. Before moving on to examine the requirements that the Elohim actually meant as mandatory and fundamental to the covenant with his people, Let's take note of what the Catechism of the Catholic Church writes today. It says, Art 2057, the 10 words point out the conditions of a life freed from the slavery of sin. The Decalogue is a path of life. The 10 words are pronounced by God in the midst of a theophany. They belong to God's revelation of himself and to his glory. The gift of the commandments is the gift of God himself in his holy will. In making his will known, God reveals himself to his people. The commandments take on their full meaning with the covenant according to Scripture. Man's moral life has all its meaning and through the covenant, or in and through the covenant. The commandments express the implications of belonging to God through the establishment of the covenant. Moral existence is a response to the Lord's loving initiative. In the acknowledgments and homage given to God and a worship of thanksgiving, it is cooperation with the plan God pursues in history. In fidelity to Scripture and in conformity with the example of Jesus, the tradition of the Church has acknowledged the primordial importance and significance of the Decalogue. Ever since St. Augustine, the Ten Commandments have occupied a predominant place in the catechesis of baptismal candidates and the faithful. The division and numbering of the commandments have varied in the course of history. The present catechism follows the division of the commandments established by St. Augustine, which has become traditional in the Catholic Church. It is also that of the Lutheran confessions. The Greek fathers worked out a slightly different division, which is found in the Orthodox churches and Reformed communities. The Ten Commandments state the Ten Commandments state what is required for the love of God and love of neighbor. The first 3 concern love of God, and the other 7 love of neighbor. The Council of Trent teaches that the Ten Commandments are obligatory for Christians, and that the justified man is still bound to keep them. The Second Vatican Council confirms the bishops, successors of the apostles, receive from the Lord the mission of teaching the mission of teaching all peoples and of preaching the gospel to every creature, so that all men may attain salvation through faith, baptism, and the observance of the commandments. Now let's get back to our basic questions. I really like how Mauro Biglino puts all the questions in bullet points, because it really, really makes you think and breaks down like what is wrong with the New King James Bible and points out the obvious flaws, and then the highest probable truth based on the newly referenced information that we have to genetic engineering and advanced technology, especially combined with all the work of people like Zecharia Sitchin and all the people that translated the cuneiform tablets found in the Middle East with all the Anunnaki history. All right, let's get back to the questions. Are the 10 words that Elohim explicitly referred to the very same as the righteous doctrines know and onto which they claim to be based? Does religious view demanding a certain type of ethical requirements reflect the needs expressed by the Elohim and written on the stone fundamental to the alliance? Are the Elohim and the Christian religion giving the same importance to the same concepts? Let us continue our literal analysis of the Bible text. We are on the mountain with Moses, and take note of a first list of precepts that the Elohim gave him, or that the Elohim gives him, as he acts as the spokesman to the people. In Exodus 20, verse 2 through 17, we have a number of generic indications as the Elohim does not give them any special emphasis. We're going to go through a bunch of bullet points here. about these generic indications. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. You shall not have any other gods, Elohims, plural, in the text before me. You shall not make idols. You shall not bow down to other Elohims, for I am a jealous God. Is it possible for a jealous, or excuse me, is it possible to be a jealous of a competitor? What does not exist? We've been asking. Evidently, there were other Elohims who attracted the people's attention, as shown in the history of the conquest of the Promised Land. And if you want any more evidence to support that claim, again, this is me on my opinions here, go study Greek mythology and look at all the different Greek gods in Greek mythology. They all correlate to the biblical text. They all correlate to the Anunnaki, all of them. So if you have all these other mythologies and religions and cultures from all over the world, from the Greeks to the Romans, the Anunnaki, they all have a whole bunch of gods, and then all of a sudden this Bible one comes along, and they completely just manipulated it to make it as if there's only one. You will not use in vain the name of Yahweh your Elohim. So there were more Elohims with different names. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. The seventh day you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor the stranger who is within your gates. Honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. Here there is no trace of the impure thoughts mentioned in the traditional dialogue. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Then other questions follow on how to build the altar for sacrifices, as well as a number of legal indications about what penalties should be imposed according to the various crimes, such as murder, damages against persons, against property. Also included are a number of directions needed in order to achieve a civil society. So how we always say, like, the gods created the government and the legal system and all that? Here it is. It's telling you right here. The gods created the legal system and the penalties. We want to underscore that there is no hint here to the tablets of stone. There is no evidence to show any particular importance of their instructions, and above all, we never see the definition known as, quote unquote, 10 words, which seems to identify the alliance of the fundamental rules. The tablets of stone make their appearance later in chapter 21 through 31. Yahweh provides us with guidelines to build the sanctuary, the tent, the elements of the decor, the furnishings, the altars, the fence, the priest's garments, and their consecration, and also directions to the craftsmen who had attended the whole service. Yahweh finally emphasizes once more the importance of the Sabbath, the rest from any work, a precept to observe at all costs, with a punishment that carries the death penalty. Immediately afterwards, verse 18 of chapter 31 says that after speaking, he gave Moses, and again, we're going into more of the Hebrew words, what they sound like and what they translate to in English. We're just going to read through them really quick. Deposition of tablets of two written, bin having stone of tables, Elohim of finger width. Reconstructed into the translation is the two tables of the deposition, tables of stone having been written with finger of Elohim. The Bible, however, says nothing about their contents, so for the moment, we don't know anything about the main elements and of the demands that Elohim had given Moses on the mount. Of course, these tables of stone could not contain the whole set of requirements described in the 11 chapters we have summarized here. What we know is that Moses descended from the mountain holding them and did not know yet that meanwhile the people had begun to worship another Elohim. They had built a golden calf, in parentheses, an Egyptian idol, thus demonstrating that Yahweh's jealousy was actually justified. Angered by this betrayal, Moses then smashed the tablets and broke them. Evidently, he must have known he could obtain a replacement, because we cannot think that a man could take the liberty of destroying a divine, unique, and irreplaceable gift. Then the dialogue with the Elohim goes on, and it is in this moment that he shows his kivod, as we described in the previous chapter. Remember, the kivod is like the quote-unquote glory of God, which is just some advanced technology, weapons technology. So he shows the advanced weapons technology as immediately afterward, the Elohim orders Moses, and then again we got more Hebrew words down here, translates to of tables of two you yourself carve, cut, write will one first the like stones that words the tables the on one's first the. I'm not trying to pronounce every single Hebrew word because it's kind of difficult, but tables the on lucho ha al were, it looks like it's pronounced ha jiu, and broke you, and then that, which looks like it in Hebrew it sounds like askir or asker, and then reconstructed into the translations here into English in order. Cut or carve for you or for yourself the two tablets of stones like the first one, and I will write. Strangely, Yahweh does not get angry with Moses for his rash act. The breaking of the tablets is clearly not an issue worth dwelling on. Once they are broken, he says very simply how to obtain two new tablets, whereon he will rewrite what he had already written on it the first time. Moses goes back to the mountain early in the morning, bringing the new tablets, and Yahweh gives a number of directions preceded by the renewal of the covenant from Exodus book 34, chapter 10. Verse 10 through 26. Essentially, it says, "Behold, I am making a covenant with you. Before all your people, I will do wonders. I will drive out enemies before you." And then he commands that Moses observes what he orders. That is, you shall not make a covenant with people of this land. Break down their altars, break their images, and cut down their groves, and do not worship their gods. You shall not take of this land daughters for your sons. You shall not make for yourself any gods of cast metal. You shall not keep the feast unleavened bread in your mouth, Abib, the first month of the Hebrew year, it says in parentheses. His are all the male firstborns, all firstborns of your sons, you shall redeem with gifts. You shall observe the Sabbath after working for 6 days. You shall observe the feast of weeks, and then in parentheses it says harvest, years, and in gathering. 3 times in the year shall all your males appear before the Elohim. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened, or let the sacrifice of the feast pass over remain until the mornings. The best of the first fruits of your ground you shall bring to the house of the Lord. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. After listing these detailed precepts, the Elohim says to Moses in verse 27, and again, it's got us all the exact Hebrew words of what he says here, what the Hebrew, how it's written in Hebrew, what it sounds like. and then the English version, and then reconstructed from Hebrew, it reads, "Write by yourself these words, since pronouncing these words I have made an alliance with you and with Israel." So we now have a clear indication that these are the words that Yahweh made Moses write on the tablets because they are fundamental for the new alliance. So the Decalogue, or the Ten Commandments, was taken by dictation by the declaration from the Elohim to Moses. A Decalogue with very little spirituality, but definitely aimed at establishing and maintaining a contractual relationship. In other words, I do something for you if you do something for me. It was a practical handbook pointed at safeguarding the people's health from the extremely precarious hygienic conditions. Accordingly, the commandments, quote unquote commandments, formally written on the tablets, ended with the prescription, "You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk." It certainly was a major prescription because it is given even 3 times in the Torah, and also gives us examples in Deuteronomy and Exodus, and 2 times in Exodus, by always using the same formula. Was it dictated by a knowledge that we have lost, or was it motivated by the fact that some viral diseases are indeed transmitted through the goat's colostrums in female's milk? We must underline here that the concept of quote-unquote pure food was indicated by a term that, well before defining something quote-unquote sacred, meant what is kosher, that is suitable for being eaten. The prohibition might also be re-emphasized to certain current dietary indications which suggest that the people are not to consume protein of different origins contemporarily, perhaps in accordance with the Maimonides, I think that's it, with Maimonides' explanation of the, it says here, the 12th century AD, in parentheses. This prohibition could have its basis in the fact that there was a rite practiced by idolaters and therefore must die with the birth of the people of Israel. In any case, whatever the real explanation was, the prescription was included in the tablets of law, those clearly written by the Elohim's direct order. How far this is from the 10 Commandments of the Christian tradition. In order to get a clear difference, following a synoptic summary of the 2 lists, and it says, I've got a bullet point here, it says, in the left column, there are the quote-unquote words that Yahweh has expressly written in the tablets, and in the right column, we read the 10 Commandments that religious tradition claims were written in those same tablets. Again, it's got these 2 comparisons side by side down here. Again, it's going through the list that we read earlier. On the left, you shall not make a covenant with the people of this land. You shall break down their altars, groves, images, and worship no other gods. And then over on the right, the comparison says, I am Yahweh, your Elohim. You shall have no other gods before me. And the next one we're comparing here. So, you shall not take this land, or you shall not take this land's daughters for your sons. You shall not take the Lord's name in vain. You shall not make gods of cast metal. And then over here on the other comparison, it says, remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. Honor thy father and your mother. You shall not murder. So on the right over here, it's looking like it's the traditional Christian 10 Commandments, and then on the left, we have the real translations directly from Hebrew. So that's a big difference in the King James Bible from the original Hebrew translations that are shown here by Mauro Biglino. Huge, huge difference. Okay, let's go to the next page here. In short, two completely different lists. We also wonder, could the left column's requirements ever be used to create a religion like Christianity? The simple answer is absolutely not. In fact, if we examine the words, it's got the Hebrew word here, that Elohim used, or that Elohim included in the tablets of the law as the alliance's fundamentals, we realize that this pact has very practical basis. It is founded on rules that have very little to do with ethics as commonly understood. For instance, there is no rules about murder, nor respect of thy neighbor, or nor respect of thy neighbor's belongings and wife. Ultimately, this alliance is a normal handbook establishing the rules of a relationship between two parties, one of which is undoubtedly the strong one, the Elohim and Anunnaki called Yahweh, whereas the other is weaker, an emerging people with the desperate need for support in its attempt to conquer a territory to inhabit. Very interesting stuff. All right, the next little section is called the inevitable conclusion. I like they have these conclusions at the end of each one of these that would really piss off the religious institutions that are making millions and millions of dollars off their victims. We can only acknowledge how much the founders of Christianity have upset the commandments' order of importance. Since they wanted to create a religion, they had to ascribe those commandments as fundamental, in parentheses, as written on the stone, and to consider them useful to their purpose. On the other hand, the Elohim considered the other commandments as fundamental and with much more concrete obligations, which could not be used to build a religious system as it is commonly understood. It is sufficient to read through the two lists and understand the basic difference, due to the fact that the Elohim did not mean to create a religion, which, by contrast, was the purpose of those who have artificially created the texts. The purpose was quite different. In fact, he wanted to establish a covenant with the people who had to serve him in exchange for the conquest and possession of a territory in which they could settle. The founders of Christianity, we might conclude, have deliberately concealed the Elohim's purpose, replacing it with theirs. Actually, it is only by consequence of this transposition that Archbishop Ravasi, in parentheses, the president of the Vatican Pontifical Council of Culture, in his book 500 Curiosities of Faith, can write, the Decalogue is, however, as Luther himself said, the best mirror where we look up to what you're missing and what you need to be seeking. The quote-unquote true Decalogue would not fit in with such a statement. Very interesting stuff about the truth about the Ten Commandments. It does seem pretty ridiculous. You know, there's a really funny comedy skit by George Carlin where he completely just rips the Ten Commandments and how ridiculous it is. It's really funny. In fact, you know what? I'm going to play it. I'm going to play it right now, and that we're going to end this video with George Carlin's comedy skit on the Ten Commandments, and then we'll go into the next section.
Now, folks, here's something else I got a problem with. The Ten Commandments. Here's my problem. Why are there 10? You don't need 10. I think the list of commandments was deliberately and artificially inflated to get it up to 10. It's a padded list. Here's what they did. About 5,000 years ago, a bunch of religious and political hustlers got together to try to figure out how to control people, how to keep them in line. They knew people were basically stupid and would believe anything they were told, so they announced that God had given them some commandments. Up on a mountain, when no one was around, God had given them the 10 Commandments. But let me ask you this. When they were sitting around making this shit up, why did they pick 10? Why 10? Why not 9 or 11? I'll tell you why. Because 10 sounds official. 10 sounds important. They knew if it was 11, people wouldn't take it seriously. Say, what, are you kidding me? The 11 commandments? Get the fuck out of here. But 10 sounds important. 10 is the basis for the decimal system. It's a decade. It's a psychologically satisfying number. The top 10, the 10 most wanted, the 10 best dressed. So having 10 commandments was really a marketing decision. And to me, it's clearly a bullshit list. It's a political document artificially inflated to sell better. I'm going to show you how you could reduce the number of commandments and come up with a list that's a little more workable and logical. We're going to start with the first 3, and I'll use the Roman Catholic version because those are the ones I was taught as a little boy. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not have strange gods before me. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Thou shalt keep holy the Sabbath. Right off the bat, the first 3, pure bullshit. Sabbath day, Lord's name, strange gods. Spooky language. Spooky language. Designed to scare and control primitive people. In no way does superstitious nonsense like this apply to the lives of intelligent, civilized humans in the 21st century. You throw out the first 3 commandments, you're down to 7. Next, honor thy father and mother. Obedience, respect for authority. Just another name for controlling people. The truth is, obedience and respect should not be automatic. They should be earned. They should be based on the parent's performance. Parent's performance. All right? Some parents deserve respect. Most of them don't. Period. You're down to 6. Now, in the interest of logic, something religion is very uncomfortable with, we're going to jump around the list a little bit. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness. Stealing and lying. Well, actually, these 2 both prohibit the same kind of behavior. Dishonesty, stealing, and lying. So you don't need 2 of them. Instead, you combine them and you call it thou shalt not be dishonest. And suddenly, you're down to 5. And as long as we're combining, I have 2 others that belong together. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Once again, these 2 prohibit the same kind of behavior. In this case, marital infidelity. The difference is coveting takes place in the mind, and I don't think you should outlaw fantasizing about someone else's wife. Otherwise, what's a guy going to think about when he's waxing his carrot? But marital fidelity is a good idea, so we're going to keep the idea and call this one, thou shalt not be unfaithful. And suddenly, we're down to 4. But when you think about it, honesty and fidelity are really part of the same overall value. So in truth, you could combine the 2 honesty commandments with the 2 fidelity commandments and give them simpler language, positive language instead of negative, and call the whole thing, thou shalt always be honest and faithful, and we're down to 3. Thou shalt, they're going away fast. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. This one is just plain fucking stupid. Coveting your neighbor's goods is what keeps the economy going. Am I right? Your neighbor gets a vibrator that plays "O Come All Ye Faithful." You want to get one too. Coveting creates jobs. Leave it alone. You throw out coveting, and you're down to 2 now. The big honesty and fidelity commandment, and the one we haven't talked about yet, thou shalt not kill. Murder. The 5th commandment. But when you think about it, religion has never really had a big problem with murder. Not really. More people have been killed in the name of God than for any other reason. All you have to do... Shit. All you have to do is look at Northern Ireland, the Middle East, Kashmir, the Inquisition, the Crusades, and the World Trade Center to see how seriously the religious folks take thou shalt not kill. The more devout they are, the more they see murder as being negotiable. It's negotiable. You know? It depends. It depends. It depends on who's doing the killing and who's getting killed. So, with all of this in mind, I leave you with my revised list of the 2 commandments. Thou shalt always be honest and faithful to the provider of thy nookie. And thou shalt try real hard not to kill anyone, unless, of course, they pray to a different invisible man from the one you pray to. 2 is all you need. Moses could have carried him down the hill in his fucking pocket. And if they had a list like that, I wouldn't mind those folks in Alabama putting it up on the courthouse wall. As long as they included one additional commandment, thou shalt keep thy religion to thyself. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.